Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another episode of The Honest Conversation. So as you can see by the title, today we'll be discussing what it's like growing up multi-ethnic, and more so from my perspective what it was like growing up multi-ethnic. We're going to talk about the good, the bad and also the confusing. So to kickstart this video, I was thinking let's jump straight into it and talk about the good first. You know, it's always nothing better than starting a video with some positivity. So many great things come from growing up multi-ethnic. So just a bit more about myself. My dad is from Egypt, which is in North Africa, and my mum is from Bosnia, which is in the east of Europe, also known as former Yugoslavia. So already you can imagine how different these two cultures are. Europe and North Africa versus the Middle East. I don't know, the thing with North Africa in particular is that some people say that Egyptians, Algerians and Moroccans aren't actually Arabs, and other people will say that they are. Like the culture is Arab, but where we're actually from isn't Middle Eastern, if that makes sense. But the culture is Middle Eastern. I don't know, there's a huge debate about that right now, whether Egyptians or North Africans are Arab, especially in terms of heritage. But either way, I grew up Arab and Eastern European. So yeah, it's been a crazy roller coaster. It's been mad. It's been interesting. First thing I wanted to mention is the food. So I have been absolutely blessed. I get the best of both worlds. So I get a bit of European food and I also get Egyptian food. So Egyptian food is quite different to the rest of the Middle East or other Arabic cultures. We do have similar things like warainab, which is like stuffed vine leaves, which a lot of people from other countries want to claim that. I don't know where it actually originates from. I think it actually originates from either Turkey or Greece, but it's become a staple in the Egyptian diet. Meat, kosheri, things like that I have been blessed with in my life growing up as a child. And then you have Bosnian food, which is so different, which is very like heavy in pastries, very big on using cheese and things. We have something similar to stuffed vine leaves in Bosnia, but they use cabbage leaves instead. To be fair, I'm more fond of the Egyptian version of it than I am of the Bosnian version. I'm not too fond of like boiled cabbage. I quite like my veggies raw. So when there's like boiled veggies, I'm not big on it. Bosnian food is a lot of like burek. Burek is like phyllo pastry with cheese and stuff like that. So I get some good food. Growing up, my mum used to not only make Bosnian and Egyptian food, but she also used to make food from around the world. My family is very mixed. I would say more so I prefer Bosnian food than I do Egyptian food, only because I used to go to Bosnia more often and where those things were made more traditionally. So that's not to say I don't like Egyptian food, because I really like Egyptian food, but more so Bosnian food. And I think my mum made it more often than she did Egyptian food. My dad used to cook Egyptian food at home. Favorite Egyptian dish is actually something called mombar. I'm less inclined to eat it now, only because I'm trying to be a bit more like vegan / vegetarian, but it's basically like a stuffed sausage. I hate saying that word, sausage. It's basically a stuffed sausage with rice and dill and lots of other herbs and stuff, and I love that. And especially when it's made like on the streets, like street food, it's really good, it's really crispy, it's yummy. I'll post a picture above to show you guys what it looks like. Moving forward, another great thing about growing up multi-ethnic is the languages that you learn growing up. Growing up, my parents made sure that my sister and I learned both Bosnian and Egyptian. My mum learned Egyptian Arabic for my dad, and my dad learned Bosnian for my mum. So at home we mixed both languages. And also because most of my family in Bosnia have either migrated to Germany or were born in Germany, a lot of my family speak German from my mum's side. So yeah, I do speak Bosnian Arabic, Egyptian Arabic. I don't really like to say Arabic because it's so broad, so many different dialects, and a lot of the different dialects don't actually understand each other. So I speak more so Egyptian Arabic, which is still Arabic, Bosnian, which sounds pretty Russian, a lot of people say, and German, which I just mainly spoke with my cousins and with my aunts who lived in Germany or were from Germany, and then obviously English because I lived here. So I grew up learning and speaking all different languages at home. home, my parents taught us by making us repeat certain phrases and certain words in each language. So we always knew how to say what in each language. And also we would go back home. I went to Egypt quite often, and I also went to Bosnia often. I went to Bosnia more often than I did Egypt, but nevertheless, I've still been to both countries. I've met both sides of the family. Another amazing thing about growing up multi-ethnic, or more so half Bosnian, half Egyptian, is the different types of traditional clothing. Bosnians have like a folklore style old clothing. So back in the day, they would wear those, but we would call them in Bosnian dimia, which is like a type of like really loose trouser pants. I'll post a picture to show you guys here. So this is like our traditional style of clothing, but you wouldn't really wear that around. It's not something that you would just wear. You'd either wear it at a wedding, or you would wear it at an event, or if there was a specific traditional event, then you would wear that. Or sometimes they do have traditional dancing classes for children where you would wear something like this. And then traditional Egyptian type of clothing is this. So yeah, I have never myself worn anything like traditional from either sides of the family, only because it's not really modern to do that anymore, unless there's a specific event that you go to where you would wear these things, or where you were asked to wear these things. And also growing up, I was taught both histories. I was taught Bosnian history and also Egyptian history. Bosnian history to me was more prevalent because of the recent issues. Well, I say recent, but it was like 26 years ago, the genocide and the war that happened in Bosnia, which is a really big part of who I am today. I was born actually around the time that the war kind of ended, slash the genocide just ended as well. So I was born around that time, so the aftermath of all of that still really affected my family, and which was one of the reasons why my parents migrated here. I actually didn't realize how big my family was until I actually went to Egypt. My family in Egypt is so huge compared to my Bosnian family. Bosnians traditionally don't tend to have a lot of children, it's just not a thing. But in Egypt, I have like, my dad has 7 brothers and sisters, so, and they all have like 10 children each. So you can imagine like how many cousins I have, and some of them I still don't even know because when I was there they weren't around, which is crazy. So now let's move on to some of the more negative things about growing up multi-ethnic. And this is something that I still struggle with till this day. One of the biggest things that I struggle with is kind of not knowing where you fit in or where you belong in a way. As much as it is good that I have parents from 2 different places, it becomes very difficult, especially socially. Let me not even get started when it comes to dating, because particularly actually when it comes to dating, it's really difficult because if you go out with an Arab guy, you're not Arab enough. And when you go out with a Bosnian person, you're not Bosnian enough. So that's been the hardest thing, just finding a place of acceptance. The one difference, main difference that I have found is it's easier for me to fit in with the Bosnian community than it is to fit in with the Arab community. And mainly because I feel like they don't really see me as one of them, particularly because my mum is European, so she's just seen as like a white woman. And I remember like even like with dating and stuff, if I'd go out with a guy who's Arab, they'd say, you know, you sure you're not too European, or are you sure, like, you know, I'm just not sure if you'll fit in with my family because, you know, you're not Arab enough, or like they might think that you're just a white girl. Or some Arabs even amongst themselves don't think that Egyptians are Arab, so even that within itself is just crazy to me. Whereas I feel like in the Bosnian community, they used to sort of see me more as like exotic or too exotic, and I might not be able to understand their culture. But at the same time, just based off my own experiences, I found that I was so much more accepted by Bosnians than I have been by Arabs. If I just give an example, when I would go back to Bosnia, everyone would be like, wow, like you're so unique, you're so different, like come to my house, like meet my children, meet my son. Like, I know it sounds a bit weird, and especially like British people might not be able to understand this, but especially where the city or the town where my mum is from, when I'd go and visit Bosnia every year, I'd go to my mum's town, so that's where my grandma lives, and everyone used to be so amazed by me and my sister. They used to be like, you guys are so different, you guys are brunette, you guys are so different looking compared to like Bosnians. Bosnians are actually predominantly like blonde haired and blue eyed, and here come me and my sister, my sister's quite darker than I am as well, so we used to be like the brunette dark kind of girls, which is really weird because I'm pretty white, you know. And another thing as well, like culturally things are very different. Let's talk about culture and religion as well, because both my parents are Muslim. My mum's Muslim, my dad's Muslim, but the way these two faiths is, no matter where Islam is around the world, it should be the same, because technically we all believe in the same fundamental practices, so those practices should be the same wherever you go in the world. But unfortunately the issue here is that a lot of people mix culture and religion together, which I do not personally agree with, because I feel like that tarnishes a lot of what religion is actually meant to be about. So for example, Bosnians have a specific way of doing things religiously and culturally, and so do Egyptians. Like for example, a lady in Egypt can't sit cross-legged because that's considered quite rude, and in Arabic there's a word called ayib, which basically means like it's a shame. It basically means shame. That word ayib means shame, and as a woman you're very restricted with what you can do, what you can wear, whereas in Bosnia that's seen as more of a normal thing. As much as there is lots of Muslim girls who are covered, it's still not as weird if I would walk down the street in shorts, whereas in Egypt I can't do that. I can't walk down the streets in shorts. Like that's a big no-no. There's no way I could do that. Whereas in Bosnia it would be completely fine. So yeah, so many things are different among the two. And I remember like growing up, I did struggle with my identity a little bit. I had a bit of an identity crisis. I didn't know whether I was more Egyptian or whether I was more Bosnian. And sort of finding that middle ground is incredibly difficult, especially at school. When people would ask you like, where are you ethnically from? I would also be like, you know, I'm more Bosnian, I'm more Egyptian. And they'd always ask me, the follow-up question would always be, oh, where do you resonate with more? As much as I love my Arabic culture, my dad's side of the family, I feel like because as a child I was so much more closer to my grandparents from my mum's side in Bosnia, that I sort of more adapted to my Bosnian ways than I have with my Egyptian ways. And I feel like because I grew up in London, my dad's culture was so different to what I was used to here, whereas my mum's side of the family was a lot more similar to how I was brought up here, if that makes sense. Culturally as well, like what's normal here is very normal in Bosnia, whereas in Egypt what's normal here isn't very normal there. So I guess that's maybe why I resonated with my mum's side of the family a lot more. And another thing is like when I was in Egypt, I remember like everything is like micromanaged, like how a girl behaves, how a girl sits, you know, you need to do this as a woman, you need to do that. And that was something that I just wasn't used to at all. And there was just so much more freedom when I would go back to Bosnia. And so I guess I fell in love with that side of my family a lot more than I did with my dad's side of the family. As much as I love everyone from my dad's side of the family, like don't get me wrong, they're all incredible, amazing people. I love my grandma, like I'm obsessed with her. She's literally the best thing in my life. Also, I guess because my grandma raised me, and also let's not forget the fact that I also lived in Bosnia. I was born there as well, so I think that makes a massive difference. Another interesting thing is as well, like I guess my parents also struggled with how to bring up me and my sister, because what my dad believed was the norm wasn't the norm for my mum. So sometimes my mum would be okay with me wearing certain things where my dad wouldn't really agree with it. And so I think that's where the biggest battles were with us growing up. Another thing I wanted to mention as well is I went to a school that was predominantly Arab for my A-levels. I just remember not fitting in with them. I just felt so different. I just felt like some of the things that they would like get up to, or some of the events that they would go to would just be, I just didn't feel like I belonged. And some of the topics that they would talk about and their mannerisms and the way that they were just was so different to the way I was. Whereas I feel like my sister was the person who sort of was able to fit in with that side of the family, was able to fit in with that side of her a bit more, whereas I felt too European sometimes. I'm like, I don't get the joke, like I don't get this, is this meant to be funny, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Or unfortunately Arabs are not very liked in Bosnia. I've had things said to me when I was there growing up. I had so many friends there, and I used to go out there a lot. I had more of a social circle there, and I would always remember like among themselves they would make jokes that they think were funny but aren't, and it would be quite hurtful because they would also sometimes forget that I'm half Arab, so they would make these jokes and make fun of Arabs and all of that, which is a bit strange. I think it depends also what part of Bosnia you're from, because I know places like Sarajevo, there's loads of Arabs there, particularly Egyptians, so they're very open to the Arabic culture and the food. I know there's lots of Arabic restaurants, but my grandma's town is very secluded, and the people who live there haven't been very exposed to ethnic people. Unfortunately, this isn't just an issue with Bosnians, this is an issue with many other cultures. Other Middle Easterns who aren't Arab would still consider me an Arab just because I'm half Arab. I know places like Iran, I know Iranians, they're not very fond of Arabs. I've had things said to me before by Iranians and by lots of other people who are in the Middle East who are not Arab. You know, said things that are not very nice, which is very hurtful. I don't know, I'm actually even finding it hard to talk about this a little bit. I mean, it's kind of sad that Arabs don't even like Arabs. It's unfortunate. I know in the whole Arab community, I do know that Egyptians are always seen as lesser than, which is very unfortunate, and that is just from my personal experiences. I feel like a lot of people from the Sham area, like Syria, Lebanon, yeah, all of those places, they're all kind of very interlinked and very close to one another, whereas North Africans and Egyptians are quite secluded despite our cultures being pretty much identical. And yeah, and even among Arabs, not even because I'm half Arab, sometimes because I'm even just Egyptian, I just felt like I didn't fit in or I didn't belong with other Arabs, which is really unfortunate. And I've heard things, you know, said to me by older people from other cultures, even from other Eastern European countries. You know, they would say things like, oh, Arabs are dirty and Arabs are like this and Arabs have this way of life, and I just hate it because, you know, what does that even mean? And I just think that's such a small, narrow-minded, most ignorant thing anyone can ever say. Like, get to know an Arabic person before you even make those kind of judgments. But I know that definitely comes from an old-fashioned sort of mindset and an old-fashioned way of thinking, which is very unfortunate because I just feel like the world would be a kinder place if people were more open to getting to know other type of cultures, other types of foods, other types of traditions. The world would 100% be a much better place. And even when, for example, I'd be getting to know other people who are in the Middle East but aren't Arab, for example, Iranians or Afghans, you know, my own Afghan and Iranian friends would tell me that Arabs are just not wanted in their community. Arabs are just not liked in their community. Arabs are, you know, not welcome, or because they're Arab, you know, you can't date my son because you're Arab. And even though I'd also be like, well, I'm not fully Arab, I'm half Arab, they'd be like, yeah, but you're still Arab. Or I'd be like, I'm half Egyptian, half Bosnian. You know, why does where I come from matter? But then still, I just wasn't accepted because of that. And it's not even just among relationships, it's more so among, you're not even going to believe this, but some parents didn't even want me and my sister around their children just because we were Arab. And they would, I feel like some people would either just see us as Arabs or just see me and my sister as Bosnians. Or sometimes I remember a comment that was made to me by a friend, like she was saying that, you know, her mom doesn't really like Arabs, doesn't really like having Arab friends. And I was like, yeah, but I'm Arab. And she was like, no, but my mom doesn't see you as Arab. My mom sees you as Bosnian because you're white. And I was like, what in the ignorance is, like what in the ignorance is that? Like, how stupid can people be? It's actually insane. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that that's the world that we live in today, and I wish things could change. So all I'm gonna say, guys, is keep an open mind when you meet people from different places. I know a lot of you guys have ethnic parents who have a specific narrow-minded view, but please don't make that the reason why you judge someone, why you don't want to be friends with someone, because I think it's such a beautiful thing just having people from everywhere around in your life. And obviously when it comes to marriage, my parents are so open with me marrying whoever I want to or being with whoever I want to, just because they are also so different, so they can't really tell me not to be with someone or to be with someone. You know, just try not to judge people, and who knows, you might even learn a thing or two and embrace their culture. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. I think the world mixing is such a beautiful thing. I think so many people are indirectly racist and they don't even realize, especially when some of my friends say, oh, my parents will never let me marry a Sudanese guy. Why? Is it because Sudanese people are black Arabs? is it because of that? You know, the world is a very strange place, and it's also a very wonderful place if we learn how to cohabit and love one another and support one another. And I think it's really, really important that we try and do that, especially this generation. And I'm quite surprised, especially with some of my friends and some of the things they come out with. But yeah, guys, please love one another and spread the love around the world. No hate. And I hope this has been an insightful video. I'm sorry for the delay. I will try and refilm all of the other videos that I wanted to post, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of The Honest Conversation. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to lightly tap the subscribe button, lightly tap the like button, and lightly tap the bell button for more. Thank you guys. Love you.